Hello everyone, in this video let's see how can we do authentication in Next.js application with Firebase. So I have opened an empty folder inside of a VS Code and let's create a new Next.js project with npx create next app at latest dot to specify to create this project in this directory and dash dash ts to say it as a TypeScript project. We'll come back after it finishes. So the installation has complete and we need some more packages for this project. So let's quickly install them. One is Firebase, and these are just for styling purpose, Bootstrap and React Bootstrap. So let's quickly install them. So our packages have been installed. So let's just create a Firebase project. So open your browsers and head to firebase.google.com and let's create a new Firebase project. So come over here, firebase.google.com, and click on go to console. And here let's create a new Firebase project. Click on add project and give a name. I'm gonna say next Firebase Auth. And you can just click on continue. And it asks for whether it should enable analytics. Let me just off it. I just don't need it. And then it will just create your project. Our project has been created. So let's click on this continue and it will redirect to a particular project dashboard. And here now we have to create a web app. So click on this third icon that's for web. So let's create a new web app in this project. And we have to name our app NextJS Firebase Auth. And I don't want any hosting, so I will just register my app. And then we have to add the Firebase SDK, which we have already installed. If you just remember, we have installed Firebase. So let's just copy this whole thing and paste in our project. And I've copied it and I'm clicking, I've clicked continue to console. And let's go to VS Code and create a new folder called config. Inside of that, I'm going to create a new file, firebase.ts, and let me just paste it there. And I'm going to just remove all of these comments. Let me just say you that in an ideal situation, you shouldn't just expose these values. You should probably putting them in an environment variables. But for this video, I'm just gonna let it be here. Now let's open the terminal and spin up a dev server. So open your terminal and run npm run dev to start a local development server at port 3000. So if you just head over to localhost 3000, we are gonna see the basic project of npm. We are gonna see a basic Next.js project. So this is the starter project from Next.js. And now let's configure Bootstrap so that we have some styling in our pages. So go to the underscore app.tsx page inside of the pages directory and import CSS from Bootstrap. So that's import bootstrap /dist/ bootstrap.min.css. So this will include the Bootstrap styling for us. So if you just refresh the page, you can see we have the Bootstrap styles by inspecting the element. And if we see some global variables, CSS variables of Bootstrap, then we can just say we have Bootstrap. Yes, as you can see, we have this variables on the root element, so we have Bootstrap. So now that we have Bootstrap set up, let's create few pages. So head over to your VS Code and I'm going to create 3 pages. So one is login.tsx and signup.tsx and dashboard.tsx. And dashboard will be the page that we are going to protect after authentication. So I entered that script and it created me 3 files. And now I just want to paste some code so that you don't have to waste your time watching me doing some CSS. So I have already prepared some code and I will explain you step by step what's going on here. So I've pasted some code in this, and this is basically login component. I'm setting some state for email and password. and then I'm rendering a form which takes an email and a password, and this is a control field. So I'm on change, I'm taking the value and setting the state, and we have a on submit handler that's gonna just log the data. And similar thing goes to signup.tsx. I'm gonna just paste some code here too, and everything is same, only difference is I have different function names and different headings. And dashboard, it's fairly simple for now. So this is it. So we have our 3 pages, so let's go and see how it's looking in the browser. So if you just navigate to /login, and let me just close the DevTools. Okay, this is our basic login form, so nothing crazy is happening. If you just see there in the console, if we enter our email, and if I just click login, I'm gonna just get the data what I have typed. And it would be better if we have a navbar, so let me just create a navbar. I'm gonna create a components directory, and inside of that I'm gonna create a navbar.tsx, and here too I'm gonna just paste some code so that you don't have to see this boring stuff. So I have this navbar, and here I have a link to sign up and a link to login, so that we use Next.js router so that it doesn't do page refreshes. So let's now include this navbar component in every page. So let's go to _app.tsx, and let's wrap this in a fragment and put our navbar in here. Let's do a navbar, and let me just import it. Okay, it's not giving some suggestions for me, so let me just import it. So we have a navbar now. If you just go and check the browser, you can see we have a navbar, and we can just go to sign up and login and dashboard. If you just go to dashboard, let me just see, we have the basic dashboard here. So now let's do some interesting stuff with Firebase. So in this project, we are going to use React context so that our user will be available throughout the application. So I'm going to create a folder called context, and inside which I'm going to create a file auth context.tsx, and in this file we are gonna have all the methods like login and the user in this particular context. So first let's import some stuff from React, and we are gonna need create context, so that we create context, and use context because we are gonna create a hook so that we can use our context. And first of all, let's create our auth context. So that goes auth context is create context, and this needs a default value, so we will just put a empty object. And let's now create a provider for this context. So it's gonna we are gonna export this. So export const auth context provider. So this will take children, a React children, since we are gonna wrap this in the _app file. And let's just give some type. Children will be of type react.react node, and then we are gonna return auth context.provider. Auth context.provider. And we will render our children inside of here. So the thing is, auth context.provider needs a value prop, which is required. So we are gonna just say the value is an empty object for now. and TypeScript is happy with us. Now let's create a hook that we will be using to get the value out of this value object. So it's gonna be called use auth, and it's gonna just use our auth context, and we will need to export this object so we can use it elsewhere in our application. The magic of Firebase authentication lies in a single function that listens for the change in the authentication state. So let's just quickly bring that in from Firebase Auth, and it's called on auth state changed. And this is the function, this most important function. So we will be listening for the changes in the authentication state inside a use effect. So let's create a use effect, and let me just import it. Whenever our app mounts, we are gonna listen for authentication state changes by using our Firebase on auth state change function. So let's do that. This will return an unsubscribe method, which we have to unsubscribe while we unmount our component. So this function, actually, if you just see, this function needs few parameters. If you just check, first one is auth, which is actually the auth module which we have to initialize inside of our Firebase. So we haven't done it yet. Let's go to Firebase config, and inside of this we have to use our app and create authentication helpers. So let me just export auth equals get auth. This is going to come from Firebase Auth, and it's imported at top by VS Code. And and I think we just have to put a const here, and we got our authentication module here, and we can just use it. It has many useful functions there, and that we have to pass here on auth state change. This function requires auth that's coming from our config that we have just created. And the next parameter is a function, is a callback function, and this callback function has a parameter called as user, and this will be the information about the user every time there is a change. Okay, so let's just see what this user has. So if you just type user dot, and you can just see there are so many fields on this user, like email, display name, and few methods like get ID token, and all the stuff, all the good stuff. So why don't we just store this in a state, right? So let's initialize a state. We will call him user and set user, and let's just bring in the use state, and initially it will be null. Let me just put any here for the time being, and I will add types later. So initially the user is null, and then if we have a user when the authentication state is changed, let's set the user to something meaningful. So let's set the user to have, yes, I want a UID, and I want an email, and I want a display name. Yeah, exactly. Thanks Copilot for that. And we got the basic information about the user. Else what we are going to do is, let's just set the user to null, and while we unmount, so we have to make some call to unsubscribe. So while we unmount this component, we're going to call to unsubscribe, and this will remove all the listeners from the Firebase. Now that we have user in our state, let's just pass that to the value of the context. So inside this object of value prop, I'm gonna say user is the user. So user value will be the user that we have in state. So now before doing anything, first we have to wrap our underscore app.tsx inside of our auth context provider, or else we will not have access to anything that context provides. So let me go to underscore app.tsx, and I will import auth context provider, and I will wrap our whole thing in this auth context provider. So now everything, any page that renders will have access to value that we are passing here if we just use our hook use auth. So when we use auth, we are going to have access to value that we are sending in this. So let's go to signup and let's check if that's the case. So I'm gonna use auth, and the return value of this is user. I think TypeScript is gonna complain me that user doesn't exist, but we know it exists. But let's just see if we get user as an null. So because we don't have any user currently, so as you can see, we have a null here. Now let's create some functions that will help us doing authentication. So I'm gonna create a new sign up function below the use effect. So let me just collapse it. So it's const sign up is, it's gonna take an email which is a string and a password which is a string, and we will return a simple function that we will call with Firebase. So go to the top and import a function create user with email and password. So let's do that, and we are just gonna return this by calling with email and password. It's that easy with Firebase. We just have to call this function with email and password, but if you can see, it's still complaining because the first argument it needs is auth. So every function in Firebase needs this auth as a first argument. So similarly, let's just create a login function. It's pretty similar, and let me just name it as login, and here sign in with email and password, and it's gonna import me from Firebase. And the third one is obviously logout, and this doesn't need anything, and it's gonna set the user as null, and let's log out. It is called as sign out from Firebase, so I'm gonna say sign out. And this function also needs auth as its first parameter, and let me just await it because it's an async function. So if you just hover over this sign out, you can just see it's returning a promise with void, and I'm gonna mark this logout function as async, and I'm gonna await sign out. So now that we have all of our functions, let's pass all of them to the value prop here. First I'm gonna pass login and sign up, and then logout. So one thing we have to do here is we have to wait for the loading state. What do I mean is even if the user is authenticated, initially the user is null here, so we have to wait until we get the user from the Firebase. So I'm gonna put a loading state which is initially set to true. So initially we will say that yeah, this is loading, and after we have finished this if else block, whatever might be the situation of the user, we will just say loading is false. And then based on whether we are loading the user or not, we are gonna show our children. So if it's loading, then we are not gonna show anything else. We are gonna render all of our children here. Let me just log the user so we get to see what's the user value. But you may have noticed inside the signup.tsx we are getting some kind of error that says property user doesn't exist on type empty object. That's because we are using TypeScript and we haven't given any types to create context, which actually decides what React expects. So here it takes a generic type. For now I'm gonna just put any, and I guess that would solve. But yeah, the error gone for now. But and then since we got everything working, let's destructure sign up function and let's add some sign functionality. So here I'm gonna say this is as an async function, and I will try catch some our request. So if there is an error, let me just log it, or I'm gonna say await sign up with data.email and data.password. Similarly, let me just log the error so that our app doesn't just crash away. And I guess that's it. So let's just go and try what happens in the browser. So in the browser, in the sign up page, we can just see in the console from the auth context.tsx page, we are getting null as our current user because no one is logged in or no one is signed up. So let's create a user and let's see if authentication goes correct. So I have given an email and a password, and let's see if it's success. Okay, we got an error, and this error is a pretty important one. If you just go and see what it's saying is inside of error message, operation not allowed. So basically we have to allow Firebase that yes, we want to have our users to email and password, so we have to say it to explicitly to Firebase. So head over to your project console in Firebase and go to authentication tab, and inside the sign in method tab here, go to email and password since that is what we are using, and click on enable. And only this one, this is passwordless sign in, we don't need that for this tutorial. So only email and password, and click on save, and then come back here and let me just do a quick refresh, and I will just type the same email and password again, and this time it should just create a new user, and we can see that in the Firebase console. So I'm hitting sign up, and if everything goes right, yes, we see our auth context, our user from auth context. We have logged it in the auth context, so we can clearly see we have a user and it has a UUID. I mean, it has a unique ID. And then if we come here inside of a users tab, yes, we can see our user has been created. So as soon as user has been created, we are logged into the session. So if you just refresh the page, you can see user is no longer null. It actually starts. So it's initially null because initially we don't know whether the user is authenticated or not until Firebase says us explicitly. So we are rendering nothing on the screen if that's the case. And after loading is done, we can see we have our user. Similarly, let's implement the login functionality. So I'm just gonna copy this, and I will go to login.tsx, and where we handle the submit, here I'm gonna just paste, and instead of sign up, we are gonna call login function, and that login is gonna come from our use auth hook, and use auth is gonna come from our context. Let's import the login function, and this should work perfectly fine. Now let's go to navbar and let's get the user, and according to user, let's show logout or sign in or sign up. So okay, there's a little error here. I have to mark this function as async. Yeah, that will solve the situation. And let's go to navbar here, and let's bring our hook. Use auth hook. We will get the user information from here, and here where we show some links here, let's say if there is a user, if there is an already user, we're gonna show something different. Eventually I will add here a logout button. For now, just I'm putting the div with a placeholder. Else we are gonna put two links so that people can go and log in and sign up for our application. So if we have a user, then we should have a button to log out. If we don't have a user, then sign in and log in and sign up functionality. So if that goes well, let's check if we have a logout button. Yeah, as you can see, we have a logout there, but it doesn't do anything right now. Let's go and add the functionality to logout. So I will just put this as a link, but we will not have any href or pass href. I guess we don't need any Next.js link, and let's say on click we will log out, and logout is gonna come from use auth. After logging out, let's just push the user to login page. So I will say router dot push to slash login, and router is from Next.js router. That's router is use router, and we have to import use router, and we got that from next router. So after immediately logging out, we are going to push the user to slash login page. So let's check if that's working. Let me go. So since we actually signed up, we are gonna see we are gonna see the user. So let me just quickly refresh here. Actually this is not sign up, this is log out. So we should see logout here, and if I just click it, I have to go to login page. As you can see, we got to redirected back to login page. Here now I can actually log in with my user. If I just type some random credentials or some wrong password or wrong email, you can see we will get some nice error messages. We can just catch them and show them to the users, but in this tutorial we are not going to do that. But let me just log in correctly. After logging in, what shall we do is we will push the user to dashboard. So I'm coming here. After logging in, I'm pushing the user router dot push to slash dashboard. So I have to get the router from Next.js router. So after logging in, we are pushing to slash dashboard, which will be this page. Currently this page is not protected, and we will add that feature just in a minute. So let me just hit let's put a email, and if this goes right, we will be redirected to login. Yeah, we got to dashboard page. But now if I just click log out, you can see if I navigate to dashboard by changing the URL here, you can see it's actually available to anyone, even though he's not authenticated. It's available. So that one thing that we have to change, we have to create a protected route. So inside of the components, I'm going to create a new component called protected route.tsx. In this, we'll add a very basic logic to identify if the user is there or not, and according to that we will just allow the user to see the page. So here what I'm going to do is similar to our context, we are going to take children, and children is of type react node, and we are let me just return children. And here we have to add the logic to check if there is any user. So I'm gonna bring our use auth. From here, let me just take the user, and we will bring our router, which is use router hook from Next.js. And inside of a use effect, we are gonna see if there is a user, and according to that we will take action. So if there is no user, I'm gonna do router.push login, and here we have to say router.push, and also I guess we have to put user as a dependency array, and I think I have to import. Okay, I got use effect there. This shouldn't. Okay, I think this needs router. Okay, so what this is basically doing is if there is no user, it's just pushing to login page. And here let's just do a little more strict thing, that is if here we will again check so that we don't have a flash content. So if there is a user, only then we are going to show children, or else just we don't show. And the main part comes here when we use this protector route inside underscore app.tsx. So generally how I do this is I will create some pages that array that doesn't which has the routes that doesn't require any authentication, so that's accessible to everyone. So I will just put that inside of an array, and here I will just check the route parameter, and if it's not in this particular routes, then I'm going to protect the route. So the logic goes something like this. So if no auth required dot includes, if this particular thing includes a router. So first we have to get router from Next.js router. If this array includes path name, then we are just going to show the component, and if it doesn't include, we are going to protect that route. So how do we do that? We will add pro protector route, and let's close it, and let's put our component inside of that, and we have to import our protector route. And I guess everything's right now. So let's now log in and see if our route is protected. So let me just quickly refresh. And if I just go to login, yes, that's a page here. So I will log into my account, and we are redirected to dashboard. This thing works right. And if I just log out now, if I go to dashboard, not deal, it's just dashboard, you can see we have to get redirected to login page. As you can see, we got redirected there. So that's a protector route functionality. So this is the very basic way in which you can implement authentication in Next.js app with Firebase. Sure, we can do a lot more things like error handling, or some storing our data in a Postgres database. But this is a baseline minimal thing that you can do to protect your routes, and it actually works pretty awesome. I hope you like this video. If so, you can just like and subscribe, and if possible, share it with your friends, and see you in the next video.